The massive stallion's violent rebellion sent the rodeo into bloody chaos, yet something in Emma's heart told her that her voice alone could reach him where whips and ropes had failed. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The scorching Texas sun beat down on the dusty grounds of the Cedar Creek Rodeo, the largest event in the small town's calendar. The bleachers were packed with spectators fanning themselves with programs, their excitement palpable in the dry summer air. For most locals, the rodeo was more than entertainment. It was tradition, a celebration of their heritage and way of life. Among the bustling crowd sat 15-year-old Emma Calloway, her hands clutched tightly in her lap, eyes fixed on the large arena where competitors prepared for the next event. Unlike the other spectators who chatted animatedly, Emma sat in tense silence. This wasn't just another rodeo for her. After years of watching from the sidelines, today was supposed to be her debut in the junior barrel racing competition. But that morning, her horse Daisy had come up lame, crushing Emma's dreams of competing. Her father, seeing her heartbreak, had insisted they still attend. "Sometimes life gives you setbacks so you can learn from watching," he'd said, though the words offered little comfort. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, drawing Emma's attention back to the present. "Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the main arena for our next event, the professional bronc riding competition." The crowd erupted in cheers as the first competitor took his position. Emma leaned forward, momentarily forgetting her disappointment. Bronc riding was always spectacular, dangerous and thrilling in equal measure. One by one, riders mounted the wild horses, most lasting only seconds before being thrown violently to the ground. Each fall made Emma wince, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and excitement. "Next up, three-time champion Luke Mitchell riding Thunderbolt," the announcer declared. A hush fell over the audience. Thunderbolt was infamous in the rodeo circuit, a massive black stallion with a reputation for being unrideable. The horse had thrown every rider who had attempted to tame him, often with injuries serious enough to end careers. Some whispered he was cursed, others claimed he was simply born wild. Whatever the truth, Thunderbolt was both feared and revered. Emma watched as the handlers struggled to guide the enormous stallion into the chute. Even from a distance, she could see the power in his muscles, the fierce intelligence in his eyes. Thunderbolt wasn't just resistant. He was calculating, seeming to anticipate his handlers' moves before they made them. His coat gleamed like polished obsidian under the harsh sun, and when he tossed his head, his mane flew like a battle flag. "That horse is the devil himself," muttered an old man sitting next to Emma. "Broke my nephew's collarbone last season in San Antonio." Emma said nothing, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from Thunderbolt. There was something about him that called to her. Not his ferocity or his size, but something deeper, something in his eyes that seemed almost human in its complexity. Luke Mitchell, a giant of a man with shoulders like boulders, approached the chute with the confident swagger of a champion. His custom leather chaps and vest were emblazoned with sponsorship logos, and his belt buckle, the size of a small plate, gleamed in the sunlight. He tipped his hat to the cheering crowd before positioning himself above Thunderbolt. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. The moment Luke lowered himself onto Thunderbolt's back, the horse went completely still, a stillness so unnatural it sent chills down Emma's spine. Then, as the gate swung open, chaos erupted. Thunderbolt exploded from the chute with a ferocity that shocked even the most seasoned spectators. This wasn't the calculated bucking of a trained bronc. This was pure, unleashed fury. The stallion twisted his massive body in the air, all four hooves leaving the ground at once. Luke, for all his experience, was immediately thrown off balance. 3 seconds later, he was airborne, landing with a sickening thud in the dirt. But Thunderbolt wasn't finished. Instead of slowing down, as most horses did once their riders were dispatched, he continued his rampage. He charged around the arena, bucking and kicking at the rodeo clowns who tried to corral him. Handlers rushed in with ropes, but Thunderbolt evaded them with almost supernatural agility. The crowd's excitement quickly turned to fear as the stallion smashed through a section of fencing, sending splinters flying. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm," the announcer urged, though the tremor in his voice betrayed his own anxiety. "Our experienced handlers will have the situation under control momentarily." Emma stood up, her heart pounding. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. This wasn't normal behavior, even for a bronc as wild as Thunderbolt. As the stallion circled the arena, she noticed he kept tossing his head toward a particular corner where a group of men stood watching with unusual intensity. One man, dressed in an expensive suit despite the heat, was filming the entire incident on his phone, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Without thinking, Emma began to move. She slipped past her father, who was distracted by the chaos, and made her way down the bleachers. A security guard tried to stop her, but she ducked under his arm and slipped through a gap in the fence. "Emma!" Her father's panicked voice called from behind her, but she was already in the arena, standing perfectly still as Thunderbolt continued his frenzied circuit. Time seemed to slow. The noise of the crowd faded to a distant buzz as Emma focused entirely on the horse. Thunderbolt spotted her, a small, fragile figure in the middle of his domain, and for a moment he paused. His nostrils flared, his sides heaving with exertion. Emma could see foam flecking his mouth and neck, and up close she noticed something she hadn't been able to see from the stands. A small wound on his flank, fresh and deliberate. Someone had hurt him intentionally. Thunderbolt pawed the ground, his eyes locked with Emma's. Everyone in the arena held their breath, certain they were about to witness a tragedy. But Emma didn't flinch. Instead, she began to speak, her voice low and melodic. "It's okay, boy. I see you. I see what they did." Her words weren't important. It was the tone, the gentle cadence that flowed from her like a lullaby. "You're scared and you're hurting, but I'm not going to hurt you." Thunderbolt tossed his head, still agitated but no longer charging. Emma took one small step forward, then another, never breaking eye contact, never raising her voice above that soothing murmur. The entire rodeo ground was silent, hundreds of people watching in disbelief as this slip of a girl approached the horse that had just sent a champion rider to the medical tent. "You don't have to fight anymore," Emma continued, now close enough that she could see the rapid pulse in Thunderbolt's neck. "I understand." And somehow, impossibly, it seemed that Thunderbolt did understand. The wild light in his eyes dimmed slightly. His breathing, though still heavy, began to steady. When Emma was just a few feet away, she slowly raised her hand, palm up, offering rather than demanding. The stallion regarded it warily, nostrils flaring as he caught her scent. In the stillness that followed, with hundreds of eyes upon them, something extraordinary passed between girl and horse, a moment of recognition, of unexpected connection. Then Thunderbolt did something that drew gasps from the crowd. He lowered his massive head and gently nudged Emma's outstretched palm. The contact was brief, tentative, but unmistakable. A horse that moments ago had been a whirlwind of destruction was now standing docile before a 15-year-old girl. "Someone get her out of there!" Emma's father shouted from the stands, his voice cracking with fear. But the handlers, professionals who had seen everything in their years on the circuit, signaled for him to wait. They recognized something rare unfolding before them, something that shouldn't be interrupted. Emma slowly moved her hand up to stroke Thunderbolt's muzzle, continuing her gentle murmuring. The stallion's ears, which had been pinned back in aggression, now swiveled forward to catch her every word. His breathing had slowed, and though his muscles still trembled with residual adrenaline, the dangerous fire in his eyes had been replaced by something else. Wariness, yes, but also a flicker of trust. "That's it," Emma whispered. "No one's going to hurt you now." As if understanding her promise, Thunderbolt lowered his head further, allowing Emma to run her fingers through his forelock. She carefully examined the small wound on his flank, a puncture mark that could only have been made deliberately. The realization made her stomach turn, but she kept her voice steady, not wanting to transfer her anger to the already traumatized horse. Gradually, the handlers approached, moving with exaggerated slowness. Emma nodded to them, somehow knowing they would follow her lead. Together, they managed to slip a halter over Thunderbolt's head, and with Emma walking at his side, her hand resting lightly on his neck, they guided the stallion toward the exit. The crowd, which had been holding its collective breath, erupted into thunderous applause. The announcer, recovering his professional demeanor, boomed over the speakers, "Ladies and gentlemen, what we've just witnessed is nothing short of miraculous. Let's give a big round of applause to this young lady who has shown us all what it truly means to have a way with horses." But Emma barely registered the cheers. Her focus remained entirely on Thunderbolt, who still looked ready to bolt at the slightest provocation. As they left the arena, she noticed the man in the expensive suit was no longer filming. Instead, he was engaged in an intense conversation with a rodeo official, gesturing angrily toward Emma and Thunderbolt. Outside the main arena, in a quieter area where the competitors prepared, Emma's father caught up with him. His face was a storm of emotions: relief, anger, pride, and fear, all battling for dominance. "Emma Rose Calloway, you could have been killed," he finally managed, pulling her into a fierce hug. "What were you thinking?" "Someone hurt him, Dad," Emma said, pulling away to look her father in the eyes. "On purpose. Look." She pointed to the wound on Thunderbolt's flank. James Calloway, a veterinarian who specialized in large animals, immediately shifted into professional mode. He approached Thunderbolt carefully, mindful of the horse's still fragile state, and examined the injury. "You're right," he confirmed grimly. "That's not from the saddle or the gait, that's from something sharp, probably right before he went into the chute." He looked up, his expression darkening. "Who would do such a thing?" "I think I know," Emma said, nodding toward the arena entrance where the man in the suit was now striding toward them, flanked by 2 rodeo officials and a security guard. He was watching too closely, like he was expecting something to happen. The man stopped a few feet away, his expensive boots incongruous against the dusty ground. Up close, Emma could see he was older than she'd initially thought, maybe in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and the deep tan of someone who spent time outdoors, though not doing manual labor. "Young lady," he began, his voice smooth as oil. "That was quite a performance, but I'm afraid you've interfered with my property. This horse belongs to Silver Creek Ranch, and I'm Victor Blackwood, its owner." Emma felt Thunderbolt tense beside her at the sound of the man's voice. She kept her hand on his neck, continuing to stroke him gently. "Your horse has been deliberately injured, Mr. Blackwood," Dr. Calloway stated, stepping protectively in front of his daughter. "As a veterinarian, I'm obligated to report suspected animal abuse." Blackwood's smile never faltered, though his eyes hardened. "Accidents happen in rodeo, Doctor. Everyone knows that. And no offense, but examining a horse from 5 feet away hardly constitutes a proper veterinary assessment." One of the rodeo officials, a heavy-set man with a clipboard, cleared his throat. "Mr. Blackwood is right about ownership, Dr. Calloway. Thunderbolt is registered to Silver Creek Ranch, but given the circumstances, perhaps we should have our official vet take a look." "Fine by me," Blackwood said with a magnanimous wave of his hand. "But I'll be taking my horse back to our trailer immediately afterward. We have another event next weekend, and I need him ready." Emma felt a chill at his words. Another event meant another rider, another opportunity for Thunderbolt to be provoked into violence. She looked up at the stallion, who was watching Blackwood with undisguised fear and hatred. "He shouldn't be competing," Emma said firmly. "He's traumatized." Blackwood's smile turned condescending. "With all due respect, miss, you're what, 12? 13? I've been breeding and training rodeo stock for 30 years. I think I know what's best for my animals." "I'm 15, Emma replied, lifting her chin. "And age has nothing to do with seeing when an animal is suffering." A flash of anger crossed Blackwood's face, quickly masked. "Well, isn't that sweet? But sentiment doesn't change the law. That horse is mine." He turned to the security guard. "Please escort these people away so my handlers can take Thunderbolt back where he belongs." The guard stepped forward awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Dr. Calloway put his arm around Emma's shoulders. "Come on, honey. We've done what we can for now." Emma knew her father was right. They were in a public place, surrounded by witnesses, and Blackwood legally owned Thunderbolt. But as she reluctantly stepped away from the stallion, something inside her rebelled at the thought of leaving him. Thunderbolt seemed to share her distress. He raised his head and let out a soft nicker, eyes fixed on Emma as Blackwood's handlers approached. "It's okay, boy," she whispered, though her heart ached with the lie. "It'll be okay." Blackwood watched with undisguised satisfaction as his men took control of the horse. Emma noticed how roughly they handled him, yanking the lead rope when he hesitated, her fists clenched at her sides. "Dad," she said quietly as they walked away, "we can't just leave him." Dr. Calloway sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Emma, I know how you feel, but Blackwood's right about one thing. Legally, that horse is his property. So we just let him hurt Thunderbolt again?" Emma's voice cracked with emotion. Her father stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression serious. "I didn't say that. I said legally. Our hands are tied right now, but I'm going to make some calls. Animal cruelty is still a crime, even for owners." As they reached their truck, Emma glanced back one last time. Thunderbolt was being loaded into a large trailer, his powerful body tense with resistance. For a moment he turned his head in her direction, and even from a distance she felt the connection between them, a silent plea that tore at her heart. "I'll find a way," she whispered. "I promise." The drive home from the rodeo grounds was silent, both Emma and her father lost in their own thoughts. The family ranch, Calloway Creek, was about 30 minutes outside of town, a modest operation with a small herd of cattle and a handful of horses they kept for riding and breeding. It wasn't much compared to the sprawling estates of wealthy ranchers like Blackwood, but it was home. As they pulled into the gravel driveway, Emma's mother, Lydia, emerged from the house. One look at their faces told her something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "I thought you'd be celebrating Emma's first competition." "Daisy came up lame this morning," Dr. Calloway explained, climbing out of the truck. "But that's not the half of it." Over dinner, they recounted the day's events. Lydia's expression shifted from concern to horror as they described Thunderbolt's rampage and the discovery of his injury. "Victor Blackwood," she repeated, shaking her head. "I've heard things about him and his operation. Nothing concrete, but rumors." "What kind of rumors?" Emma asked, leaning forward. Lydia exchanged a glance with her husband. "That he's more concerned with profits than animals. That his broncs and bulls perform so spectacularly because they're encouraged." "Encouraged," Emma echoed. "Provoked," Dr. Calloway clarified grimly. "Some unscrupulous stock contractors use various methods to make their animals buck harder. Irritants, tight flank straps, even small injuries like what you saw today." "That's horrible," Emma whispered, her appetite gone. "And illegal, right?" "Absolutely," her father confirmed. But it's not always easy to prove, especially when the person doing it has money and influence. "We have to do something," Emma insisted. "You should have seen his eyes, Mom. Thunderbolt wasn't just angry, he was scared." Lydia reached across the table to squeeze her daughter's hand. "I know that look, James," she said to her husband with a small smile. "Emma's not going to let this go." Dr. Calloway sighed, but there was a determined glint in his eyes that matched his daughter's. "I already made some calls on the way home. Spoke to Dave Miller at the Rodeo Association and left a message for Sarah Jensen at Animal Control." "And?" Emma prompted. "Dave wasn't surprised," her father admitted. "Said there have been whispers about Blackwood for years, but no one's been able to make anything stick. The man's careful, and he's got friends in high places." Emma pushed her plate away. "So they're just going to let him keep hurting Thunderbolt?" "Not if we can help it," Dr. Calloway said firmly. "But we need evidence, Emma. Real evidence, not just suspicions." Later that night, Emma sat cross-legged on her bed with her laptop, diving deep into research about Victor Blackwood and Silver Creek Ranch. What she found painted a disturbing picture. Blackwood had built his fortune in real estate development before turning to rodeo stock contracting as a hobby that had quickly become profitable. His animals consistently won top marks for their performances, making them sought after for major events. But there were also forum posts and social media comments hinting at darker practices. Retired rodeo hands alleging mistreatment, a suspicious fire at one of his barns that had killed several horses right when an investigation was rumored to be starting, unexplained deaths of animals that had underperformed. Most troubling was a news article from 2 years ago about a champion rider who had been critically injured after being thrown from one of Blackwood's broncs. The rider had initially claimed something had been done to the horse to make it buck unnaturally, but later retracted his statement and moved to Australia shortly afterward. Emma was still reading when her phone pinged with a message from her best friend, Riley, who had also been at the rodeo. "You're all over social media," the text read, followed by a link to a video. Emma clicked it, and there she was, standing in the arena, talking to Thunderbolt as the massive horse gradually calmed under her influence. The video, clearly taken by a spectator, had already gathered thousands of views and comments like "Horse Whisperer Girl" and "Angel Calms Demon Horse." She scrolled through the comments until one caught her eye. "Check the horse's left flank at 123, something's not right." The commenter, using the username RodeoVet78, had posted several times, pointing out the suspicious wound and questioning why Thunderbolt had been allowed to compete in that condition. Emma immediately sent a private message to RodeoVet78, explaining who she was and what she had witnessed. To her surprise, she received a response almost immediately. "I worked rodeo circuit for 15 years, the message read. "What I saw in that video isn't normal bucking behavior. That horse was in pain and panicking. I've heard rumors about Blackwood's methods. If you're serious about helping that stallion, I may have information that could be useful." Emma's heart raced as she replied, "I'm serious. Anything you know could help." "Not over messages," came the response. "Too risky. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m., at Joe's Diner on Highway 16. I'll be wearing a blue cap with the Texas Rangers logo." Emma hesitated only briefly before responding, "I'll be there." She knew her parents wouldn't approve of her meeting a stranger, but sometimes you had to take risks to do what was right, she would tell them afterward. The next morning, Emma made an excuse about helping Riley with a school project and borrowed her mother's car. Joe's Diner was a local institution, a chrome and neon throwback to the 1950s that served the best pancakes in the county. At exactly 10 a.m., she pushed open the door, the bell above it jingling cheerfully. The diner was half full, mostly with truckers and local farmers having late breakfasts. In a corner booth sat a man in his 60s wearing the promised blue Ranger's cap. His weathered face spoke of decades spent outdoors, and his hands, wrapped around a coffee mug, were gnarled and strong. When he spotted Emma, he gave a slight nod. "You must be the girl from the video," he said as she slid into the booth across from him. "I'm Dr. Mike Reynolds. Used to be the official vet for the Western Rodeo Association before I retired." "Emma Calloway," she replied, offering her hand. "My dad's a vet too, James Calloway." Recognition flashed across his face. "James Calloway? Good man. Trained at Texas A&M, if I recall." Emma nodded, relief washing over her. If this man knew her father, he was probably legitimate. "So what can you tell me about Thunderbolt and Blackwood?" Dr. Reynolds glanced around before leaning forward. "That stallion has a history. He wasn't always called Thunderbolt, and he wasn't always a bronc. He used to be a champion barrel racing horse named Storm Runner, belonged to the Blackwood family's barrel racing star, Victor's daughter, Sophia." Emma's eyes widened. "Blackwood has a daughter." "Had," Reynolds corrected grimly. "She died in a competition 3 years ago. Terrible accident. The horse, Storm Runner then, spooked at something, crashed into a barrier. Sophia was thrown and broke her neck." "That's awful," Emma whispered. "It was. And after that, Victor seemed to blame the horse, renamed him Thunderbolt and turned him into a bronc. But here's the thing. Storm Runner was known for being bomb-proof, calm under pressure. The spook that killed Sophia was completely out of character." "You think something happened? Something deliberate?" Reynolds sighed heavily. "I don't know. But I do know that since then Blackwood has used that horse in ways that seem vindictive. And Thunderbolt's not the only one. Blackwood's methods cross lines, Emma. Lines that shouldn't be crossed in this sport." Emma felt a chill run through her. "Do you have proof? Something we could take to the authorities?" Dr. Reynolds shook his head. "Nothing concrete enough. Blackwood's careful. He has his own private veterinarians who sign off on everything, and anyone who raises concerns tends to find themselves blacklisted from the circuit." His weathered face tightened with anger. "I tried speaking up once 2 years ago. Suddenly found myself under investigation for professional misconduct. Charges were eventually dropped, but by then, my reputation was damaged enough that retirement seemed the best option." "So we can't do anything?" Emma asked, frustration evident in her voice. "I didn't say that." Reynolds reached into his jacket and pulled out a small notebook. "I've been keeping track of Blackwood's horses, their injuries, their behavior patterns. It's not enough on its own, but combined with new evidence." He slid the notebook across the table. "Take this. Maybe your father can use it." Emma picked up the notebook, feeling the weight of responsibility it represented. "Why give this to me? Why now?" Reynolds' eyes softened. "Because of what I saw in that video. You connected with that horse in a way I haven't seen in 40 years of veterinary practice. Thunderbolt trusts you, and from what I've heard about Blackwood's plans, that stallion is going to need someone on his side." "What plans?" "Blackwood's entered Thunderbolt in the Southwest Championship next weekend. It's the biggest rodeo event of the season, with the highest purse and the most media attention. Word is he's personally guaranteed Thunderbolt will put on the show of a lifetime." Emma's stomach dropped. "That sounds ominous." "It is. Thunderbolt's already labeled as dangerous after yesterday's incident. If something worse happens at the championship, they might put him down," Emma finished, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. Reynolds nodded grimly. "Exactly. And I think that might be what Blackwood wants. A spectacularly dangerous final performance, followed by a public decision to euthanize the horse. It's the perfect end to his twisted narrative." Emma clutched the notebook tightly. "I won't let that happen." "I believe you," Reynolds said with a sad smile. "But be careful. Blackwood's not someone to cross lightly. He's got money, connections, and a vindictive streak a mile wide. As they finished their conversation, Emma noticed a man at the counter watching them with unusual intensity. When he caught her looking, he quickly turned away, but not before she recognized him as one of the handlers who had taken Thunderbolt away at the rodeo. "We need to go," she whispered to Reynolds. "I think one of Blackwood's men is here." Reynolds casually glanced over his shoulder, then cursed under his breath. "That's Carl Mercer, Blackwood's head wrangler. He must have followed you." They quickly paid the bill and left, separating in the parking lot. As Emma drove away, she checked her rearview mirror repeatedly, relieved to see no one following her. But the encounter had shaken her. If Blackwood was having her watched, the situation was even more serious than she'd thought. When she arrived home, her parents were waiting, their expressions a mixture of worry and disappointment. Riley's mother called, her mother said quietly, wondering how the project was going. Emma's heart sank. She'd been caught in her lie. "I'm sorry," she began, but her father interrupted. "Where were you, Emma? We were worried sick." Taking a deep breath, Emma explained everything. Her meeting with Dr. Reynolds, what she'd learned about Thunderbolt's past, and Blackwood's possible intentions for the upcoming championship. Her parents listened in stunned silence. When she finished, her father took the notebook Reynolds had given her and began flipping through it, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "This is comprehensive," he finally said. "Reynolds was always meticulous. If he's been documenting this for years..." "We need to take this to the authorities," Lydia insisted. "It's not that simple," Dr. Calloway replied. "Reynolds is right. This is circumstantial at best. We need hard evidence of current abuse." "What about the wound on Thunderbolt's flank?" Emma asked. "That was pretty clear." "It was, but by now it's probably been treated and explained away as an accident. Without access to the horse, we can't prove anything." Emma paced the kitchen, her mind racing. "Then we need to get access," she said decisively. "We need to see Thunderbolt again, document his condition properly." Her father shook his head. "Blackwood's not going to let us anywhere near that horse, Emma. Not after yesterday." "What if he didn't know it was us?" Emma pressed. "The Southwest Championship is open to the public, right? We could go as spectators." "And do what?" her mother asked. "Storm the stables?" "No, but maybe we could get close enough to take pictures, gather evidence." Emma turned to her father. "You know people in the rodeo world, Dad. Isn't there someone who could help us get backstage access?" Dr. Calloway was quiet for a moment, considering. "Maybe. My old roommate from vet school, Mark Winters, is on the championship's organizing committee. He might be able to get us passes." "Would he help us investigate Blackwood?" Emma asked eagerly. "Mark's a straight shooter. If there's animal abuse happening, he'd want it stopped." Dr. Calloway nodded slowly. "I'll call him." For the next few days, the Calloway family worked together, gathering information and making plans. Dr. Calloway spoke with his friend Mark, who agreed to provide them with all access passes to the championship as consulting veterinarians. Lydia, who had a background in journalism before settling into ranch life, reached out to contacts at local media outlets, laying groundwork for a possible story if they found conclusive evidence. And Emma researched everything she could about Silver Creek Ranch, creating a detailed map of the championship grounds and noting all possible locations where Thunderbolt might be kept. "Remember," Dr. Calloway cautioned as they finalized their plans, "our goal is documentation only. We get pictures, video if possible, and then we take it to the proper authorities. No confrontations with Blackwood or his people." Emma nodded, though privately she wondered if simply documenting the abuse would be enough. The authorities had failed to act before despite Dr. Reynolds' efforts. What would make this time different? The night before the championship, Emma couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Thunderbolt's face, the fear and pain in his eyes, but also that moment of connection they had shared. She had made him a promise, and she intended to keep it. Her phone buzzed with a text from Riley. "Be careful tomorrow. I'm worried about you." Emma smiled at her friend's concern. Riley knew her well enough to recognize when she was diving headfirst into something potentially dangerous. "I will," she texted back. "Dad and Mom will be with me." As she finally drifted off to sleep, Emma's last thoughts were of Thunderbolt. "Hold on," she whispered into the darkness. "We're coming." The Southwest Championship Rodeo transformed the normally sleepy town of Grayson. Streets were clogged with trucks and trailers, hotels displayed no vacancy signs, and the local restaurants buzzed with the excited chatter of visitors from across the state. The event was held at the Grayson Coliseum, a massive structure that dwarfed Cedar Creek's modest rodeo grounds. As the Callaways approached the venue, Emma felt her pulse quicken. Somewhere inside that sprawling complex was Thunderbolt, perhaps already being prepared, or provoked, for his performance. She clutched her backpack, which contained a small digital camera, Dr. Reynolds's notebook, and her phone with an extra battery pack. Her father had insisted they all wear concealed body cameras as well, disguised as ordinary buttons on their shirts. "Ready?" Dr. Calloway asked as they parked in the section reserved for event staff and veterinarians. Emma nodded, her mouth too dry for words. Her mother squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Remember, we're just gathering evidence," Lydia reminded her. "No confrontations." At the staff entrance, they were met by Dr. Mark Winters, a tall man with a salt and pepper beard and the relaxed confidence of someone used to handling crises. He embraced Dr. Calloway warmly before handing them their passes. "I've listed you as consulting vets specializing in performance evaluation," he explained in a low voice. "That should give you access to most areas without raising eyebrows, but be careful around the Silver Creek section. Blackwood has his own security." "Has Thunderbolt arrived yet?" Emma asked anxiously. Dr. Winters nodded. "Came in last night. Blackwood's got him in the high security section. Says it's because of the incident at Cedar Creek, but it's unusual. Most stock is kept in the general holding pens." "Have you seen him?" Dr. Calloway inquired. "Briefly during the mandatory check-in inspection. He seemed subdued, not at all like the wild horse from the video that's been circulating." Dr. Winters frowned. "I tried to get a closer look, but Blackwood's vet intercepted me, said they had the situation under control." "Could you tell if he was injured?" Emma pressed. "Nothing obvious, but I wasn't allowed close enough for a proper examination." He checked his watch. "Look, I need to get back to the medical station. The bronc riding event starts at 2. That gives you about 3 hours to look around. Text me if you need anything." With that, Dr. Winters departed, leaving the Callaways to navigate the complex on their own. They decided to split up to cover more ground. Dr. Calloway would check the medical records on file at the veterinary station. Lydia would talk to other stock contractors and handlers to gather gossip, and Emma would try to locate Thunderbolt. "Be extremely careful," her father warned her. "If anyone questions you, just say you're Dr. Calloway's daughter, helping out. Nothing about our real purpose. And text us your location every 15 minutes. Emma nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of their mission. With a final glance at her parents, she set off toward the high-security section, her heart pounding in her chest. The backstage area of the Coliseum was a maze of stalls, equipment rooms, and warm-up arenas. Emma moved confidently, her pass prominently displayed, nodding to staff members as if she belonged there. Most were too busy with their own tasks to question a teenager with proper credentials. Following the map they had studied, she made her way to the high-security section. Unlike the open layout of the regular stables, This area was enclosed, with a guard checking passes at the entrance. Emma took a deep breath and approached him. "Hi," she said brightly. "I'm Emma Calloway. My dad's consulting on performance evaluation today." She flashed her pass, hoping the guard wouldn't look too closely at the specifics. The guard, a bored-looking man in his 20s, barely glanced at her credentials. "What do you need?" "Just checking the layout. Dad wants to know where all the top performers are stabled." He shrugged. "Whatever, just don't disturb the animals before the show." Relieved, Emma slipped past him into the restricted area. The atmosphere immediately felt different, quieter, more controlled. The stalls here were larger and more solidly built, housing the rodeo's star performers. She walked slowly, checking each nameplate until she found the one she was looking for. Thunderbolt, Silver Creek Ranch. Unlike the other stalls, which had open top halves allowing visitors to see the animals inside, Thunderbolt's stall was completely enclosed. A small viewing window, currently shuttered, was the only way to see inside without opening the door. Emma looked around, confirming she was alone in the corridor, then carefully slid the shutter open a fraction. What she saw made her blood run cold. Thunderbolt stood with his head hanging low, an unnatural posture for the proud stallion she had encountered at Cedar Creek. He was tethered tightly to a ring in the wall, preventing him from moving more than a few inches in any direction. But what horrified Emma most was the device attached to his flank, a small mechanical contraption that appeared to be designed to deliver some kind of stimulus. "Oh, Thunderbolt," she whispered, "what are they doing to you?" At the sound of her voice, the stallion's head jerked up. He turned as much as his restraints would allow, nostrils flaring as he caught her scent. A flicker of recognition passed through his eyes, and he let out a soft nicker that tore at Emma's heart. Quickly, she pulled out her camera and took several photos through the window, making sure to capture the restraints and the device on his flank. She was about to try opening the door when a voice behind her made her freeze. "What do you think you're doing?" Emma spun around to find Carl Mercer, Blackwood's head wrangler, standing at the end of the corridor. His eyes narrowed with recognition. "You're that girl from Cedar Creek, the one who interfered with our horse." Emma's mind raced. "I'm here with my father, Dr. Calloway. We're consulting veterinarians for the event." "Is that so?" Mercer's tone made it clear he didn't believe her. "And does your consultation involve spying on private property?" "I wasn't spying," Emma protested, trying to sound indignant rather than terrified. "I'm helping my dad check all the top performers before the event. Standard procedure." Mercer took a step toward her. "Hand over that camera." "I can't do that," Emma said, backing away. "These are official records." Before Mercer could respond, a commotion erupted somewhere nearby, shouting followed by the crash of equipment falling. The wrangler hesitated, torn between dealing with Emma and investigating the noise. "Don't move," he ordered, pointing a finger at her before hurrying toward the source of the disturbance. The moment he was out of sight, Emma bolted in the opposite direction. She needed to find her parents, show them what she had discovered. As she ran, she sent a group text. "Found T being mistreated. Got pictures. Mercer spotted me. Meeting point ASAP." She burst out of the high-security section, nearly colliding with her mother, who was waiting just outside. "Emma, what happened? Your father created a diversion when he got your text." "Mom, it's worse than we thought," Emma gasped, pulling her into an empty equipment room. "They have some kind of device on him, and he's restrained so he can barely move." Lydia's face paled as Emma showed her the photos. "We need to get these to the authorities immediately." "Will it be enough?" Emma asked desperately. "What if they just say it's standard equipment?" "It's not standard," came her father's voice as he slipped into the room, slightly out of breath, "and combined with Reynolds' documentation, it's enough to warrant an immediate inspection." Dr. Calloway examined the photos on Emma's camera, his expression hardening with each image. "This is a modified shock device," he said grimly. "It's designed to deliver an electric stimulus to make the horse buck more aggressively, completely illegal in sanctioned rodeo events." "We need to get these to Dr. Winters," Lydia urged. "He can stop the event." "I've already texted him," Dr. Calloway replied. "He's meeting us at the veterinary station in 5 minutes, but we need to move quickly. Blackwood's people will be looking for Emma." They slipped out of the equipment room and made their way through the backstage corridors, taking a circuitous route to avoid running into Mercer or any other Silver Creek employees. Emma's heart pounded in her chest, every shadow seeming to conceal a potential threat. When they reached the veterinary station, Dr. Winters was waiting, his face tight with concern. "Show me what you found," he said without preamble. Dr. Calloway handed him the camera, and Dr. Winters flipped through the images, his expression growing increasingly thunderous. "This is a clear violation of at least 3 different regulations," he muttered. "I need to take this to the event director immediately." "What will happen to Thunderbolt?" Emma asked anxiously. "If these allegations are proven, the horse will be pulled from competition and examined by an independent veterinarian," Dr. Winters explained. "Blackwood could face sanctions, possibly even criminal charges." "But that's the problem," Dr. Calloway interjected. "The burden of proof is on us, and Blackwood has friends in high places. He'll claim the device is for training purposes only, or that it was placed by someone else. That's why we need to move now, before he has time to remove the evidence," Dr. Winters said firmly. "I'll call in the chief steward and the animal welfare officer. They'll conduct an immediate inspection." As Dr. Winters made the necessary calls, Emma found herself staring at the clock on the wall. The bronc riding event was scheduled to start in less than 2 hours. Would they be able to stop it in time? And even if they did, what would happen to Thunderbolt afterward? "What if Blackwood just denies everything?" she asked her father. "What if they can't prove he was responsible?" Dr. Calloway put his arm around her shoulders. "That's why we have Reynolds' documentation as well. It establishes a pattern. But I won't lie to you, Emma. It's going to be an uphill battle." "All right," Dr. Winters said, ending his call. "The officials are on their way. We need to meet them at the high-security section in 10 minutes." As they prepared to leave, the door to the veterinary station burst open, and Victor Blackwood strode in, flanked by Carl Mercer and another man in an expensive suit. "There you are," Blackwood said coldly, his eyes locking on Emma. "This girl has been harassing my staff and trespassing around my animals. I want her removed from the premises immediately." Dr. Winters stepped forward. "Mr. Blackwood, we've received allegations of serious rule violations concerning your horse, Thunderbolt. Officials are on their way to conduct an inspection." Blackwood's smile never faltered, though his eyes hardened to flints. "Is that so? Based on the word of a teenage girl and some photographs that could have been taken anywhere at any time?" "The timestamps on the photos are from 15 minutes ago," Dr. Calloway pointed out. "Easily manipulated," Blackwood dismissed with a wave of his hand. "But I have nothing to hide. Inspect away. Though I must warn you, wasting the committee's time with false accusations could result in your own sanctions, Dr. Winters." The threat hung in the air, unmistakable despite Blackwood's pleasant tone. Dr. Winters didn't flinch. "I'm aware of the rules, Mr. Blackwood, as are you, I hope." The man in the suit stepped forward. "I'm Lawrence Bennett, Mr. Blackwood's attorney. I feel compelled to point out that these accusations, if made public before being verified, could constitute defamation. My client has a stellar reputation in the rodeo community." "No one's making anything public yet," Dr. Calloway said firmly. "We're following proper procedures." "See that you do," Bennett replied. "Because if my client's reputation or business interests are damaged by unfounded allegations, we will pursue all available legal remedies." Emma watched the exchange with growing dismay. Blackwood seemed completely unfazed by their accusations, confident in his ability to deflect them. And why wouldn't he be? He had money, influence, and apparently his own lawyer on standby. "The inspection will proceed as planned," Dr. Winters said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "If you have nothing to hide, Mr. Blackwood, you have nothing to worry about." Blackwood's smile widened. "Of course, I'll accompany you myself. I'm eager to clear up this unfortunate misunderstanding." As they left the veterinary station, Emma fell into step beside her father. "He's too confident," she whispered. "I think he's already removed the device." Dr. Calloway nodded almost imperceptibly. "Probably, but the marks from the restraints might still be visible, and there could be injection sites if they've been using chemical stimulants." When they reached the high-security section, they found a small group already gathered: the chief steward, a stern-looking woman in her 50s, the animal welfare officer, a younger man with a clipboard, and 2 security guards. Dr. Winters quickly explained the situation, showing them the photographs Emma had taken. "We need to examine the horse immediately," the steward decided after viewing the images. "Mr. Blackwood, please open the stall." Blackwood complied with exaggerated courtesy, swinging open the door to Thunderbolt's stall with a flourish. "As you can see, everything is in order." Emma's heart sank as she peered inside. The restraints were gone, as was the device she had photographed. Thunderbolt stood in the center of the stall, still subdued, but no longer tethered to the wall. There was no visible evidence of the mistreatment she had witnessed just a short time ago. "The photographs clearly show restraints and a device on the horse's flank," Dr. Calloway argued, pointing to Emma's camera. "They've been removed in the last 20 minutes. Blackwood shrugged innocently. "I don't know what you think you saw, Dr. Calloway, but Thunderbolt has been prepared according to all competition regulations. Feel free to examine him." The animal welfare officer entered the stall cautiously, aware of Thunderbolt's reputation. The stallion shifted nervously, but didn't display any aggression as the man checked his flanks, legs, and head. "There are some marks on his hide that could be from restraints," the officer reported, "but they could also be from normal handling of a difficult animal. There's no device attached now." "Check for injection sites," Dr. Calloway suggested. "They may have used chemical irritants." The officer conducted a more thorough examination, checking Thunderbolt's neck, flanks, and the sensitive areas typically targeted for such injections. After several minutes, he straightened up with a frown. "There are some small marks that could be injection sites, but without blood tests, I can't confirm what they're from. They could be from legitimate medications." "I have all of Thunderbolt's medical records right here," Blackwood's attorney interjected smoothly, producing a folder. "Every medication administered has been documented and approved by our veterinarian." Emma looked at Thunderbolt, her heart breaking for the proud stallion who now stood so unnaturally quiet. When their eyes met, she saw a flicker of recognition, a silent plea that made her resolve harden. They couldn't give up now. The chief steward reviewed the medical records with a critical eye, occasionally asking Blackwood's veterinarian questions about specific medications. Emma watched the process with growing frustration, seeing their case slipping away as each potential piece of evidence was explained or dismissed. "Without concrete proof of current violations, I cannot pull this horse from competition," the steward finally announced. "The photographs are concerning, but there's no way to verify when they were taken or what they actually show." "This is absurd," Dr. Calloway protested. "The timestamps on the photos can be manipulated," Blackwood's attorney interrupted smoothly. "And even if they weren't, they don't definitively prove any wrongdoing on my client's part." The steward held up a hand to forestall further argument. "However, given the concerns raised, I am ordering additional monitoring of Thunderbolt before and during his performance. Dr. Winters, you will personally oversee his preparation, and no Silver Creek staff will be allowed unsupervised access to the horse until after the event. Blackwood's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. That seems excessive, but if it will put everyone's minds at ease, I have no objections. Additionally, the steward continued, blood samples will be taken immediately and after the performance for testing. That's standard procedure anyway, Blackwood replied with a dismissive wave. Now, if we're done with this little inquisition, I have preparations to make for the show. Emma felt a surge of helplessness as Blackwood and his entourage departed, leaving them with a partial victory at best. Yes, Thunderbolt would be monitored, but he would still have to perform, still be subjected to whatever had been done to him prior to their arrival. It's not enough, she said quietly to her father as they walked away from the high-security area. They've already done something to him. You saw how he was. That's not the same horse I met at Cedar Creek. Dr. Calloway nodded grimly. You're right. They're using something that won't show up in standard blood tests, or they've done something that won't leave obvious traces. What do we do now? Lydia asked, her voice tight with worry. I don't know, Dr. Calloway admitted. We've pushed as far as we can within the rules. If we make more accusations without proof, we risk losing all credibility. Emma stopped walking, a determined expression settling on her face. Then we need to find proof they can't ignore. And I think I know how. Emma, her mother began, recognizing the stubborn set of her daughter's jaw. Dr. Reynolds said that Thunderbolt used to be a barrel racing horse named Stormrunner, right? That he belonged to Blackwood's daughter before she died. Emma looked between her parents. What if there's something in that history that explains what's happening now? Something that could help us understand what Blackwood is really doing? It's worth looking into, Dr. Calloway agreed cautiously. But how do you propose we do that in the next... He checked his watch. Hour and a half before the event starts? The rodeo archives, Emma replied. Every major event keeps records of participants, results, incidents. If Sophia Blackwood was a barrel racer, and if her accident happened during a competition, there would be an official report, her father finished, nodding slowly. Good thinking, Emma. The championship must have an archives office. They quickly consulted their venue map and located the administration offices on the second floor of the Coliseum. As they approached, they saw a sign reading, Records and Archives, on one of the doors. Let me handle this, Lydia suggested. I can say I'm doing research for a feature article on the history of the championship. She smoothed her hair and adjusted her press credentials, which she had brought along just in case. Emma and her father waited in a nearby corridor while Lydia entered the archives office. After what seemed like an eternity, but was probably only 15 minutes, she emerged with a triumphant gleam in her eyes, clutching a manila folder. I found it, she whispered as they huddled together in an empty conference room. The official incident report from the Grayson Spring Classic 3 years ago, when Sophia Blackwood died. They spread the documents on the table. Incident reports, witness statements, medical examiner's findings, and several photographs of the accident scene. Emma's heart clenched as she saw images of a beautiful young woman lying motionless on the arena floor, a dark horse standing nearby, its reins tangled in the wreckage of a barrel. According to this, Dr. Calloway said, scanning the medical report, Sophia died instantly from a broken neck after being thrown from her horse when it crashed into the third barrel. But look at the witness statements, Lydia pointed out. 3 different people, including the arena judge, noted that the horse seemed to spook at something near the barrel. One person specifically mentioned seeing a flash of light. And here's the official findings, Emma added, reading from another document. The investigating committee concluded that Stormrunner, that's Thunderbolt, was startled by a camera flash from the audience, causing him to veer suddenly and crash. That's the official story, her father agreed. But I'm not seeing anything here that helps us with our current situation. Wait, Emma said, flipping through the photographs again. Look at this one, taken right before the accident. You can see someone standing at the edge of the arena, near the third barrel. They all leaned in to examine the grainy image. Indeed, there was a figure partially visible at the edge of the frame, standing in what appeared to be a restricted area. "Can we enlarge this?" Dr. Calloway asked. Emma pulled out her phone and took a picture of the photograph, then used her fingers to zoom in on the mysterious figure. As the image expanded, they could make out more details. A man in his 30s, with dark hair and a distinctive scar across his cheek. "That's Carl Mercer," Emma gasped. "Blackwood's head wrangler, the one who caught me at Thunderbolt's stall." What was he doing in the arena during Sophia's run? Lydia wondered. That area should have been restricted to competitors and officials only. Dr. Calloway frowned deeply. "And look at what he's holding. Some kind of small device." "A camera, maybe?" Lydia suggested. The report mentioned a flash. "Maybe," Dr. Calloway said slowly. "Or maybe something designed to spook a horse at a critical moment." Emma felt a chill run through her. "You think Mercer deliberately caused the accident? But why? Sophia was Blackwood's daughter." "I don't know," her father admitted. "But this puts everything in a different light. Blackwood turning Stormrunner into Thunderbolt after Sophia's death, the systematic abuse, entering him in dangerous competitions. It's almost like he's punishing the horse. Or using him for something else entirely," Emma murmured, a terrible suspicion forming in her mind. "Dad, what time is it?" "Almost 1:30. The bronc riding event starts in 30 minutes. Emma stood up abruptly. "We need to find Dr. Winters now." They raced through the corridors of the Coliseum, dodging staff members and early arriving spectators. Emma clutched the photograph showing Mercer at the scene of Sophia's fatal accident, her mind whirling with theories and fears. If Blackwood's own wrangler had been involved in his daughter's death, what twisted game was being played here? They found Dr. Winters at the preparation area, where he was overseeing Thunderbolt's pre-event inspection as the steward had ordered. The stallion stood unnaturally still as Blackwood's veterinarian checked his vital signs, with Mercer hovering nearby. "Dr. Winters," Dr. Calloway called urgently, "we need to speak with you, in private." The veterinarian excused himself and joined them in a quiet corner. "What is it, James?" "We're about to move Thunderbolt to the holding pen." "We found something in the archives," Emma explained quickly, showing him the photograph. "That's Carl Mercer, Blackwood's head wrangler, at the exact spot where Sophia Blackwood's horse spooked 3 years ago. He's holding some kind of device." Dr. Winters studied the image, his brow furrowing. "This is disturbing, but I'm not sure what it proves." "Maybe nothing on its own," Dr. Calloway conceded. "But combined with what we know about Thunderbolt's treatment and the fact that Blackwood seems fixated on having him perform today despite the risks, something bigger is happening here, Mark." Dr. Winters ran a hand through his hair, visibly troubled. "What are you suggesting?" "I think Blackwood is planning something for today's event," Emma said, voicing the suspicion that had been growing in her mind. "Something that goes beyond just making Thunderbolt buck harder for a good score." "That's a serious accusation," Dr. Winters replied cautiously. "Look at the facts," Lydia interjected. "Blackwood renames his daughter's horse after her death, turns him from a barrel racer into a bronc, and systematically mistreats him. Then he enters him in the biggest rodeo of the season despite, or perhaps because of, a violent incident at Cedar Creek. And he's unusually interested in the media coverage," Emma added, remembering how Blackwood had been filming at Cedar Creek. "Almost like he wants witnesses." Dr. Winters' expression darkened. "If you're right, what do you think is going to happen?" "I don't know exactly," Emma admitted. "But I'm certain Thunderbolt is in danger, and possibly the rider and spectators too." Dr. Winters checked his watch. The event starts in 20 minutes. I can delay Thunderbolt's run by placing him last in the order, but I can't pull him without more concrete evidence. Then we need to find that evidence, Dr. Calloway said firmly. And we need to keep eyes on Mercer. They quickly formulated a plan. Dr. Winters would rearrange the performance order to put Thunderbolt last, giving them more time. Dr. Calloway would speak with the event's security chief about Mercer's suspicious presence in the photograph. Lydia would monitor the preparation area, watching for any last-minute handling of Thunderbolt. And Emma would try to get closer to the horse, hoping their connection might reveal something others had missed. As they separated, Emma felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She had started this by intervening at Cedar Creek, and now she might be the only one who could prevent whatever Blackwood had planned. The Coliseum was filling rapidly, the excited buzz of the crowd growing louder as showtime approached. Emma made her way to the holding area where competitors and animals waited before entering the arena. Security was tight, but her all-access pass and Dr. Winters' authorization allowed her through. Thunderbolt had already been moved to a small pen at the far end of the holding area. Unlike the other broncs, who shifted restlessly and occasionally tested the strength of their enclosures, the black stallion stood perfectly still, his head lowered, almost as if he were conserving energy, or resigned to his fate. Emma approached carefully, aware of the handlers watching her. Dr. Winters asked me to check his vitals one more time, she explained, holding up a stethoscope she had borrowed from her father. The handler, not one of Blackwood's men, nodded and stepped aside. Be careful, that one's got a reputation. Emma slipped into the pen, her heart racing. Up close, Thunderbolt looked even worse than before, his eyes dull, his magnificent spirit seemingly crushed. When he recognized Emma, however, a flicker of awareness passed through those dark eyes. "Hey, boy," she whispered, pretending to check his heart rate while actually examining him for any signs of tampering. "What have they done to you?" As her hands moved over his coat, she felt something unusual near his withers, just under the edge of where the saddle would sit. A small, hard lump beneath the skin that felt like a microchip. No, it was too large for that. More like a small electronic device. Emma's blood ran cold. She had read about remote-controlled devices used in illegal rodeo operations, implants that could deliver a shock or release a chemical irritant on command. If Blackwood had implanted such a device in Thunderbolt, she needed to get a closer look, but without tools to part the thick hair or proper lighting, she couldn't be certain, and she couldn't remove it here in plain view of everyone. "Everything okay over there?" called the handler, noticing her prolonged examination. "Just being thorough," Emma replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "His pulse is elevated, but that's to be expected before a performance." She gave Thunderbolt one last gentle stroke, leaning close to his ear. "I'm going to help you," she promised in a whisper. "Just hold on a little longer." Leaving the pen, Emma immediately texted her father about her discovery. His response was immediate. "Find Dr. Winters, now." But before she could move, a voice behind her froze her in place. "Checking up on my horse again, Miss Calloway?" Victor Blackwood stood blocking her path, his smile as cold and calculating as a snake's. Today he wore an expensive Western suit in black, with silver embroidery, looking every inch the successful stock contractor celebrating his moment in the spotlight. "Dr. Winters asked me to monitor his vital signs," Emma replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. "How conscientious of you." Blackwood's eyes, so different from his daughter's in the photographs Emma had seen, revealed nothing but calculated charm. "And what's your professional assessment?" "He seems subdued." "As he should be, before a performance, conserving energy." Blackwood glanced over her shoulder at Thunderbolt. "He's going to make history today, you know. Everyone will be talking about his performance." There was something in the way he said it that sent chills down Emma's spine, a note of anticipation that had nothing to do with competitive success. "Mr. Blackwood," she began, not sure what she was going to say but feeling compelled to try. "About your daughter." The change was instantaneous. Blackwood's charming facade cracked, revealing a flash of raw fury before he regained control. "My daughter is none of your concern," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "Now, I believe the event is about to begin. You should find your seat." It wasn't a suggestion. 2 security guards had materialized behind Blackwood, their expressions making it clear they would enforce his wishes if necessary. "Of course," Emma said, backing away. "Enjoy the show." As she turned to leave, Blackwood called after her, "Oh, I will. I've been waiting 3 years for this day." Emma hurried away from Blackwood, her mind racing. 3 years for this day. The exact amount of time since Sophia's death. This wasn't just about rodeo or even animal cruelty. This was about revenge, obsession, and something deeper and darker that she was just beginning to comprehend. She spotted her father across the holding area, deep in conversation with the security chief. Pushing her way through the busy pre-show crowd, she reached his side just as the conversation was ending. "Dad," she gasped, "Thunderbolt has some kind of implant near his withers, and Blackwood said something about waiting 3 years for today. I think you're right," Dr. Calloway interrupted grimly. "The security chief just showed me footage from Sophia's accident that never made it into the official report. It shows Mercer clearly using some kind of flash device right as Stormrunner approached the 3rd barrel." Emma's blood ran cold. He caused the accident that killed Sophia, but why would Blackwood's own employee? "Because he wasn't Blackwood's employee then," came her mother's voice as Lydia joined them, slightly out of breath. "I just spoke with one of the old-timers who's been working these events for decades. Mercer used to work for Harrison Ranching, Blackwood's main competitor and bitter rival. He only joined Silver Creek about 2.5 years ago." "So Mercer caused the accident that killed Sophia," Emma pieced together, horror dawning, "and then somehow ended up working for Blackwood?" "I don't think Blackwood knows," Dr. Calloway said, "or at least he didn't know until recently. The security chief says this footage was requested by Blackwood's people just last month." A terrible suspicion formed in Emma's mind. What if that's what this is all about? What if today is Blackwood's revenge, not just on the horse he blames for his daughter's death, but on the man who actually caused it? Dr. Calloway's eyes widened with understanding. A public spectacle with maximum witnesses. Thunderbolt goes berserk, but instead of targeting the rider, he attacks Mercer, Emma finished. Blackwood knows exactly how to provoke Thunderbolt to make him aggressive, and with that implant he could direct the aggression exactly where he wants it. "But that's insane," Lydia protested. "He'd be risking everyone in the arena, the rider, the other handlers, the audience." "I don't think he cares," Emma said softly. "You didn't see his eyes when I mentioned Sophia. It was like nothing else matters to him anymore." The opening ceremonies had begun, the arena lights dimming as spotlights swept across the dirt floor. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, welcoming the capacity crowd to the Southwest Championship. "We need to find Dr. Winters," Dr. Calloway decided. "With this new information, he has to pull Thunderbolt from the event." They split up to search for the veterinarian, agreeing to meet back at the medical station in 10 minutes. Emma headed toward the chutes where the broncs were being prepared for their runs, hoping Dr. Winters might be there performing last-minute inspections. As she navigated the crowded backstage area, the sounds of the crowd grew louder, cheers and applause as the competitors were introduced, the energetic music pumping through the sound system. The event was now fully underway, the clock ticking down toward Thunderbolt's appearance. She finally spotted Dr. Winters near the first chute, clipboard in hand as he observed the preparations. "Dr. Winters," she called, pushing past a group of handlers. "We need to talk." The veterinarian turned, his expression already troubled. "Emma, I was just looking for your father. Something's wrong. Blackwood's changed the order again. He pulled rank with the event director, and Thunderbolt's been moved up to third position instead of last." Emma's heart sank. "That's less than 15 minutes from now. We need to stop it. We found evidence that—" A commotion near the holding pens cut her off. Handlers were shouting, and above their voices rose a familiar sound, the angry scream of a stallion in distress. Thunderbolt. "They're moving him to the chute now," Dr. Winters said, already hurrying toward the noise. "We need to act fast." Emma followed, pushing through the crowd until they reached the area where Thunderbolt was being guided toward the competition chute. The stallion was no longer subdued. His eyes were wild, his powerful body tense with agitation. 4 handlers struggled to control him as he tossed his head and sidled nervously. "He's been activated somehow," Emma said, her voice tight with fear. "The implant, someone's triggered it." Dr. Winters wasted no time. "As supervising veterinarian, I'm pulling this horse from competition," he announced loudly, stepping in front of the handlers. "He's showing clear signs of distress." "On what grounds?" came Blackwood's voice as he emerged from the shadows, his face a mask of controlled anger. "He's a bronc. They're supposed to be spirited before a ride." "This goes beyond normal pre-competition behavior," Dr. Winters argued. "As per Regulation 15.7, I have the authority to remove any animal I deem unfit or unsafe to perform." "We'll see about that," Blackwood replied coldly, pulling out his phone. The event director might have a different opinion. While the 2 men argued, Emma's attention remained fixed on Thunderbolt. The stallion's distress was escalating by the second, his movements becoming more erratic, more desperate. And then she saw it, Carl Mercer, standing near the gate that led to the arena, watching Thunderbolt with a strange expression. Not fear, as one might expect when facing a dangerous animal, but something like anticipation. Emma's gaze darted between Mercer and Blackwood, and suddenly the final piece clicked into place. Mercer wasn't Blackwood's intended target. He was his accomplice. "Dad!" she shouted, spotting her father pushing through the crowd toward them. "It's not what we thought. They're working together." Dr. Calloway reached her side, slightly out of breath. "What do you mean?" "Blackwood and Mercer, they're in this together," Emma explained rapidly. "Look at them. They're not watching each other. They're both watching Thunderbolt. I think they planned Sophia's death together." Her father's face paled as the implication sank in. But why would Blackwood want his own daughter dead? "Insurance money," came Lydia's voice as she joined them, clutching a folder. "I found this in the archives. Sophia had a $5 million life insurance policy, taken out by her father just 3 months before her death. And guess who was the investigating officer who ruled it an accident? Lawrence Bennett, the same lawyer who's representing Blackwood now." The pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. Blackwood had conspired with Mercer to kill his own daughter for the insurance money, using the horse as their unwitting weapon. And now, 3 years later, with suspicions finally starting to surface, they were about to eliminate the only living witness to their crime, Thunderbolt himself. "They're going to make him go berserk in front of thousands of people," Emma realized. A horse with a history of violence finally snaps completely, attacks his handlers, maybe even the crowd. They'd have no choice but to put him down. The perfect way to silence him forever, Dr. Calloway agreed grimly, and with all the documentation of his dangerous behavior, no one would question it. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Up next, ladies and gentlemen, the infamous Thunderbolt from Silver Creek Ranch, ridden by champion Wade Mitchell." Emma's heart hammered in her chest as time seemed to slow around her. Thunderbolt was being forced toward the chute, his eyes rolling in terror, foam flecking his muzzle as the implant continued to torment him. The handlers, unaware of the true situation, struggled to control him, interpreting his pain-driven panic as simple pre-performance energy. "We need to stop this now," Dr. Calloway shouted, turning to Dr. Winters. "Mark, you have the authority." Dr. Winters nodded grimly and stepped forward. "This event is suspended immediately," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of his authority. "Security, I need this horse examined by independent veterinarians right now, and I want Mr. Blackwood and Mr. Mercer detained for questioning." Blackwood's face contorted with rage. "You have no grounds for this. This is outrageous." "We have evidence of conspiracy to commit murder," Lydia interjected, holding up the folder of documents, "and animal cruelty that goes far beyond rodeo violations." As security personnel hesitated, caught between conflicting authorities, Thunderbolt let out a scream of pure agony. The handlers lost their grip on his lead rope, and the stallion reared up, his massive hooves slashing the air. Everyone scattered, diving for safety as nearly a ton of terrified, pain-maddened horse crashed back to the ground. In the chaos, Emma saw Mercer pull something from his pocket, a small remote control. His thumb hovered over a button, his eyes fixed on Thunderbolt with cold calculation. She didn't need to guess what would happen if he pressed it. The implant would deliver its maximum stimulus, driving Thunderbolt into a murderous frenzy in front of thousands of witnesses. Without thinking, Emma lunged forward, her only thought to stop Mercer before he could activate the device. She slammed into him with all her weight, knocking him off balance. The remote flew from his hand, skittering across the concrete floor. "You little," Mercer growled, grabbing her arm with bruising force. But the momentary distraction was enough. Dr. Calloway and one of the security guards tackled Mercer from behind, pinning him to the ground. Across the room, 2 more guards had moved to block Blackwood's attempt to escape. Meanwhile, Thunderbolt had broken free completely. With no one controlling him, he bolted toward the only exit he could see, the gate leading directly into the main arena, where thousands of spectators sat watching the event. "No!" Emma cried, breaking free from the commotion and racing after him. She burst through the gate just seconds after Thunderbolt, emerging into the brightly lit arena to gasps and screams from the audience. The stallion stood in the center of the dirt floor, his sides heaving, his head tossing in confusion and pain. The rider who had been scheduled to mount him was frozen halfway up the chute, watching in disbelief as his bronc performed without him. The announcer's voice crackled over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. Security personnel are on their way to handle the situation." But Emma knew security wouldn't be fast enough. Already, Thunderbolt was beginning to spin in tight circles, his behavior growing more erratic as the implant continued to torment him. Any moment now, he might charge the stands or attack the rodeo clowns who were cautiously approaching. "Stay back!" she shouted to the clowns. "Everyone stay back!" And then, ignoring every instinct for self-preservation, Emma began walking directly toward Thunderbolt. The crowd gasped collectively. Someone screamed, but Emma heard none of it. Her focus narrowed to the suffering animal before her, to the connection they had formed at Cedar Creek that seemed a lifetime ago now. "Thunderbolt," she called, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Stormrunner." At the sound of his original name, the stallion's ears flicked toward her, though he continued to move restlessly, his body trembling with tension. "I know you're in pain," Emma continued, her voice carrying across the now silent arena. "I know what they did to you, but you don't have to fight anymore." She was close enough now to see the wild fear in his eyes, the sweat darkening his coat. Close enough that one strike from those powerful hooves could kill her instantly. But still she moved forward, her voice never faltering. "You were never meant to be this," she said softly. "You were meant to run barrels with Sophia, to feel the joy of partnership. What happened wasn't your fault." Thunderbolt snorted, tossing his head, but his frantic movements were slowing. Something in Emma's voice, in the gentle cadence of her words, seemed to be reaching through his pain. "That's it," she encouraged, now only a few feet away. "Listen to my voice. Focus on me, not the pain." With excruciating slowness, she extended her hand, palm up, not reaching for him but offering connection if he chose to take it. "I promised I'd help you, and I will, but you have to trust me." The entire arena held its breath. Somewhere in the distance, Emma was vaguely aware of commotion at the gate. Her father and the security team arriving, Blackwood's shouts of protest. But she didn't turn. Her entire being was focused on the horse before her, on the battle being waged between pain and trust in those intelligent eyes. Then, in a moment that would later be described as miraculous by everyone who witnessed it, Thunderbolt lowered his massive head and gently, so gently, pressed his muzzle into Emma's palm. A collective sigh of relief rippled through the crowd, followed by spontaneous applause that quickly built to a thunderous ovation. But Emma heard none of it. She was whispering to Thunderbolt, her free hand now gently stroking his neck, feeling for the implant beneath his skin. "I need to get this out," she murmured. "It's going to hurt for a moment, but then the pain will stop. I promise." As if understanding, Thunderbolt stood perfectly still, his trust in her complete. Emma felt the hard lump beneath his skin and, taking a deep breath, pressed firmly on either side of it. The stallion flinched but didn't pull away as the small device broke through the skin and fell to the dirt. The moment it was removed, the change in Thunderbolt was immediate and profound. The tension drained from his powerful body, his breathing steadied, and his eyes, those expressive eyes that had first called to Emma at Cedar Creek, cleared of pain and fear. The next few hours passed in a blur. Security guards led Blackwood and Mercer away in handcuffs, the evidence against them now irrefutable. The implant was collected as evidence, along with the remote control and the documentation Lydia had uncovered. Dr. Winters and a team of independent veterinarians examined Thunderbolt thoroughly, treating his wounds and confirming that, with proper care, he would recover completely from his ordeal. Through it all, Emma remained by Thunderbolt's side, a calming presence the stallion seemed unwilling to be separated from. As the chaos gradually subsided and the Coliseum emptied of spectators, she sat with him in a quiet corner of the stables, simply being together in peaceful silence. "What happens to him now?" she asked when her father joined them, bringing a blanket for Emma and a special mash for Thunderbolt that would help him regain his strength. "Well," Dr. Calloway said, settling beside her, "legally, he'll be considered evidence in a criminal case for a while, but after that," he smiled at his daughter, "I've been speaking with the authorities. Given the circumstances and your unique connection with him, they're open to the possibility of us becoming his guardians once the case is resolved." Emma's heart leapt. Really? He could come live at Calloway Creek? It would take work. He's been traumatized and recovery won't happen overnight. But yes, if that's what you want, I think we could make it happen. "That's what I want," Emma said softly, stroking Thunderbolt's velvet muzzle. "He deserves to be Stormrunner again, to just be a horse, not a weapon or a tool for revenge." As if understanding her words, Thunderbolt nickered softly, gently nudging her shoulder in a gesture that, coming from such a powerful animal, could only be described as tenderness. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Emma stood at the fence of the round pen at Calloway Creek watching as Stormrunner, as he was now called again, trotted freely around the perimeter, his black coat gleaming with health in the morning sun. The trials were over, justice had been served, and the magnificent stallion was finally home. "Ready to try?" her father asked, joining her at the fence. Emma nodded, her heart full as she opened the gate and stepped inside. Stormrunner immediately trotted to her side, greeting her with the gentle affection that still amazed everyone who had known him as Thunderbolt. Carefully, Emma placed a light saddle on his back. Not a bronc rig designed for maximum bucking, but a proper riding saddle. Stormrunner stood perfectly still, accepting the weight without protest. This was the culmination of months of gentle work, rebuilding trust, and creating a new kind of partnership. As Emma swung into the saddle for the first time, she felt Stormrunner's muscles tense briefly beneath her. She leaned forward, her hand stroking his neck, her voice soft and reassuring in his ear. "It's okay," she murmured. "We're just friends on a journey together. No more fighting, no more pain." And with that, Stormrunner stepped forward into his new life, guided not by fear or pain, but by the gentle voice of the girl who had saved him.